There we are. Okay. So, here we are in edit mode, and I have a group of these sort of bird photos, some bear photos in here as well. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to apply a watermark to them. Watermarking requires me to have something to watermark with, and so this is going to be the starting place for this conversation. So, just to show you where watermarking is and to get a feel for what's required, let's just go into this eagle or this photo right here, this golden eagle photo, and we'll navigate over to the watermarking section. So watermarking is located in the filter menu, so it's located on the left side section of the user interface. So actually, if I close all these other ones, I'll show you where it is here. So you can find watermarking under add, which makes sense. It's something pardon me, it's additive to an image, not changing geometry or working with lighting, but it's rather just adding a new I guess in this case, icon or logo to your image. So you can find it right here. Watermarking is such where you can actually add your own file. So by default, what you'll see is the ACDSee logo, which obviously is not going to be useful to any of you, right? Because you want to add your own watermark. But it's just a default so you can understand how the tool works and what its relationship is to your image. So what we're going to start with is just like a really quick tutorial on how to make your own watermark just using text. So what a watermark is is either an ACDSee file, which is a type of file where the layers are preserved. It's a non-destructive file, or it's a PNG file. So PNG files, excuse me, are files that contain no, provided that the background is a transparency, PNGs will preserve that transparency. And we'll show you what that looks like, but that's different from a JPEG. So JPEGs don't have transparency function. And what I mean by that is, let's just imagine a red dot in the center of a file. And on the edges of that dot, right, are going to be the space where there's no information. If it was a JPEG image, that area around the red dot would be filled in with just a white color, right? That's what a JPEG does, is it flattens it and creates a white color in the sort of areas around it. Whereas a PNG doesn't do that. A PNG would preserve a transparency. It would essentially keep the background of the image as containing no pixel information. So in order to make a watermark, we actually have to create a transparency. So how do we do that? We'll come back to this tool in a minute. Functionally, this is the least complicated part about creating a watermark. So the actual watermarking process is very easy, but the rest of the process is a little bit more complex. So we'll talk about this as well. But I'm just going to discard these changes for a moment here, and we'll actually look about creating a watermark. So in ACDSee, we can do something very cool. We can create our own file with no base image. Typically, when you're interacting with ACDSee, what you'll do is you'll navigate to a file, right? An image, in this case, our eagle image, and you'll open it up in a corresponding mode, V mode, develop mode, edit mode, whatever, right? We don't technically need to do that. I can navigate to file and new image. And this gives me the ability to actually create an image from nothing rather than working with a pre-existing image file. So if I click on that, boom, it's going to open up this little dialog box, and this dialog box can tell me a bunch of things about my file. But basically, the first thing it tells me is, hey, what do you want this file to look like? What is the dimensions of this file? What's the DPI or resolution of our image? And then what's the background contents going to be? Now, we want to really make sure that the background contents is transparent. So there's this little check mark box that appears at the bottom of this section here, and we want to ensure that this information is transparent. This is probably the most important step, is we just may ensure that transparency is being applied here. The next, maybe most important thing is, well, we're going to want to change the orientation. So what I was thinking for this workshop is basically just using the text tool to write my name. And as you saw in that brief example there, that's kind of what I did there. But so we'll explore this again And to do that, obviously, I want more width than height because I'm writing my name horizontally. But if you had a watermark you were writing in Japanese, you maybe would do it vertically or something like that. But this is just an idea here, just for at least for the Latin alphabet. I'm going to make sure that my width is greater than my height. So I'm just going to click OK here. Oh, I might change the name of this. Let's change it to watermark. And then I'll just call it my name, a price, and click OK. So, ooh, fun. There we go. So my watermark is created, or at least the file for it is. So one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is that there's this checkerboard pattern. And if you're completely unfamiliar with layers in ACDSee, or you're unfamiliar with how layers and masking works, the main thing to note here is that this process, this sort of box here, it contains no pixel information. It is empty, right? If I was to save this as a file, it would be an invisible file. But what we're going to do to it is we're going to actually add text, and that text will have pixel information, which will mean that the surrounding area, the area around the text itself, will be transparent, while the text pixels will, in this case, be white or whatever color you choose, and as such visible to your eye. So we have our layer here, and all what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate to the text tool. And we're just going to apply text to our image here. So I'll put text in the center, and then we can make this bigger as we see fit. For those of you who haven't used the text tool before, it's just up at the top menu bar here, and it gives you the ability to add a text, in this case, layer to your file. And from here, what we can do is we can type our name. So I'll type my name, Adam, and price. I'll probably reduce the size of this so I can fit it all in the artboard here. So text, much like the move tool, comes already sort of with these bounding boxes. So these bounding boxes, they're these little yellow squares that appear on the edges of my image, and this gives me the ability to resize it. Even if I was to navigate away from this layer, by navigating back to the layer, it actually prompts me to resize it. So this is a non-destructive adjustment. If I was to save this file as an ACDSee file, which ultimately I'm going to, this is something I could edit in the future. So if I wanted to change the color or something like that, I could do that. I don't know, let's play with a different font while we're at it. I'll just add something that contrasts my other one. So I'm just going to select a font here. This is just the top menu bar within the actual tool itself. And then I get to just go down and, I don't know, I could choose here. I'll choose an even groovier font. So I have my groovy font here, and I will place it in the center. And what I'm going to do here is you'll notice right off the bat that the top and bottom have way more transparency or more area to them than the actual text does. So what we can do here is we can actually reduce the size of the artboard. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll click on this little canvas resize or resize canvas button here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull these down quite a bit so that there's way less what we call white space or negative space on the top and bottom of my image here. And when I click commit, it's going to functionally resize it. So this is just it gives me the ability to resize my image. And as you can see here, the text is in white, and the canvas in this case, or the artboard, is a transparency beneath. Just to visualize it, we could fill this transparency with a color, for example. Let's choose pink right now. I could fill this, and it would look something like this. So this pink area that you're seeing is what is going to be, when I go to actually save this file, this pink area is the area that I'm going to make transparent. And so it'll be the thing that we won't see on our image, right? So we have our text here. It's roughly placed in the center. Good enough, right? So what I'll do from here, I'm just going to delete that layer, make sure that I still can see that transparency there. And I'm just going to save this as an ACDSee file. Actually, funnily enough, when I created this file, it's sort of saved as an ACDSee file already. So if I go to save as, you can see that. Within this birds folder is the watermark. And it's, as you can see, it's an ACDSee file here. For those that are unfamiliar with this file type, this is a proprietary file, meaning it's a file specifically for ACDSee. And ACDSee file formats contain all of your layer information. So this information that appears on the right is our layer information. It contains masking information, opacity information, all of these qualities that are preserved non-destructively in the file. This differentiates it from flattened images, like, say, a PNG or a JPEG or a TIFF or something like that, that is compressed and no longer contains that sort of layer information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this file regularly here. So I'm going to click save. It'll save the information in that ACDSee file. While I'm at it, I might save a PNG file. So I'll go to save as once again, and I'll just navigate down the ACDSee file format to where it says PNG. There's portable network graphics, and I'll save this watermark as a PNG. Like I said previously, PNGs are the one, web format that will allow me to preserve that transparency, which is different from other web files. So click yes. And it says this image contains an embedded color profile. That's fine. The embedded color profile. This image contains layers. You must flatten it before saving. Do you want to continue? That's totally fine. Now, when I navigate back to manage mode, you can see that I have two files here. I have my A price file, the ACDSee file, and then I have a PNG, and I'm really hoping this works the way I want it to because it's displayed in such a way that, let's see. Yeah, this may be, well, we'll see. Either way, we still have a working file in the ACDSee file here, so. Okay, so we have our created watermark in this case. So I'm going to try this PNG on, see if it works. I'm pretty sure it should, but I also have the ACDSee file itself. So the file that I've created just using edit mode and the text tool. As you can see already here, this file is, it's displaying, it looks like it's displaying the transparency as a black for the purpose of this this image here. So, actually, let me just do one last check before I commit to this here. Just want to make sure that, yeah, okay. Well, that's a PCX. Preserve metadata. Okay, this should work. Okay, all right. So now that I have that, we can go to the next step. So the next step would be to actually open up your image and add this watermark in relation to where the image. The other thing to consider, and this is a fairly big deal, but we might want to do this while we're recording an action. So if you just want to add a watermark to one image, you don't necessarily have to go through this process that I'm about to show you. However, in the case that you want to apply a watermark to multiple images, or you have the intention to, say, fill up a folder with watermarked images, then this might be something that you want to do because we can just expedite adding a watermark to an image. So I'll open up this Eagle file again, go to edit, and what we're going to do is we'll just straight up go into watermark. But before we do that, I want to make sure that I'm recording, and that's going to give us the ability to add this watermark as a batch operation. So it's going to be more than just one image. It'll contain way, way, way more than that. So I will click the record new action button, and it's probably not visible to you, so I'll drag it on. There's this little, whenever you make a recording, and again, what we're doing is we're just recording a series of changes that we're making to our file so that we can apply this same changes to other images. So we're sort of saving, in this case, we're kind of similar to develop mode, we're saving a preset. So as you can see, our recording here is live, and we haven't actually done anything to this image yet. So as we do things to this image, it will populate this list. If I go to add watermark, if I do that, what I can do is I can add my own custom watermark, so a new watermark using this preset box right here. So if I click and, or actually rather if I add plus, we can add another one to this list. So when I click the plus button here, it's going to bring up another dialog box here that allows me to choose based on a folder. And as we know, I just did a folder a second ago that contained a bunch of these different watermarks. So we have our watermark that we made using the ACDSee file, and then we have our watermark that we made with the PNG. So let's try the PNG first. I'm fairly certain this is going to work, but it's worth checking. Yeah, great. So now you're seeing the sort of fruits of our labor here in when we created the PNG with that applied transparency. You can see that when applied to this image here, the edges of that PNG are transparent. They don't actually contain that information. When I gave you the example of that using the pink, that's that area of that pink area that we saw is now been is sort of when we saved it without any pixel information, and as such it's treated as a transparency. That's why when I pull this text over top of my image here, you can see that the bird's beak and the eye and that stuff like that shines through because there's no pixel information in that area. So just a long kind of way to say that you can create your own watermark using edit mode, as we've just described. It just involved us creating a new file, resizing the file, and adding text to a transparent file. And then the second thing is it just required us to make sure that our text is created in such a way that it is transparent. So files that contain transparency in ACDSee are the ACDSee files themselves, and universally PNGs will always contain a transparency if they're, created that way. So what we can do here is we can actually now resize this because no watermark is presented with such such gravity. So I'll reduce the size of it. It's way too big. Let's just, I don't know, that's probably pretty good, eh? Like just a decent size. And then what we'll do is I'll click on this bottom right-hand corner here in the anchor point section. So when I add a file to my watermarking list, you can see it now in this list. So there's the ACDSee one, the default, there's the example I made prior to this workshop, and then there's the watermarking one that I just created, this one right here. And when I go to resize it, you can see that it will shrink. But one of the things that's listed here is that there's this positioning that we can see. So if I position this, like say 172 to 185 away from the edge of my, or 255 away on horizontal, or I guess on the x-axis, and 176 on the y-axis, you can see that these kind of adjust in real time when I move this. This anchor point is just like a quick way for me to set the location of the watermark on my image. So I could use the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner, top bottom left corner, or center, for example, and it will place that watermark. When I do so, it looks like the default is 110 pixels, so 110 pixels horizontally and vertically. And it allows me to also, while I'm working in this mode, to maintain an aspect ratio when I'm doing the resizing. So what that means is that the actual the image that is my that I added here, the watermark image, if I have the maintain aspect ratio or resizing, it'll always resize evenly rather than it being skewed or warped as I move it. It also gives me the ability to add a bunch of different blends. So the obvious blend that we would want to apply here would be opacity, right? So we'll maybe set an opacity at 25. 25 would show essentially a quarter of the pixels in my image. So what that does is it means that 75% of the pixels in this this image here are fully transparent, and 25 are fully opaque. And as a result of that, we see a image that has almost looks like a ghostly or like semi transparent aspect to it. We can also apply different blends if we wanted to. I'm not sure how well these are going to come about if I. So this is a overlay blend, for example, which often looks pretty good on images. You could apply. Looks like hard light doesn't do anything in this case. Screen going to do anything? Think probably not. Linear light. Some of these you might actually need to reduce the opacity to see better. So let's reduce it to say 50. And we could go to something like soft light and you could see the effect there. You could try, I don't know, vivid light, it looks like. You could apply these different blends as you see fit. I think when it comes to watermarking, especially if you're watermarking a logo that's monochromatic, you'll probably just use either multiply, screen, or overlay. Overlay is kind of like the standard for this sort of thing. So we'll try that out. We'll try an overlay blend with an opacity of, let's see, maybe I'll increase my opacity to 75 because I do want this to still be visible in my image. I don't want it to be too hidden. If it's too hidden, then it's not useful. So we'll apply a blend mode of overlay, and we'll say 25% of that overlay will be transparent, and 75% of it will be opaque. There's also a couple other tools that you're given here. We're not going to apply transparency. We've already done that in the editing process. And also we're applying it with the opacity adjustments here anyway. But what we will do is we'll add watermark as a new layer. So what this will do is it's going to treat that watermarking, that watermark that we've added as a distinct layer rather than merge it with the image itself. So if I don't click on this add watermark as a new layer, what it's going to do is it's going to apply it's going to essentially make my image, it'll flatten that watermark onto my image. If I keep the watermark as a new layer or apply it as a new layer, that means that I can edit it now. So this is a useful tool to turn on because it preserves non-destructiveness of our image. You can leave it off. It's not going to matter too much, but just note that if you ever have an issue with this image, you'll probably have to restore the image to its original quality because you don't have the ability to remove this watermark. With this turned on, we can remove this watermark as we see fit. So I'll click done. And when I do that, you can see that I have a watermark on the bottom right-hand corner of this image. But most importantly, you can see that it's added as a layer. So this layer 1 contains that layer information, right? So from here, let's have a look at our recording action. You can see that okay, obviously it's still recording. That's good. We can see that the watermark is visible. And I just clicked the hide layer, unhide layer to showcase the fact that it's its own distinct element. So that's listed here. So with our watermark technically added, what we can do here is we can actually finish this recording. The watermark's added, we can end this recording and we can save this file. So to do that, just to be clear, I'm happy with the location of this watermark on my file. I'm pretty happy with the opacity of the watermark. We're good. It's fine. We'll click on the stop recording button, which is located next to the actions section right here. And when I do that, it's going to prompt me to save my action. So we might create a new category and call it watermark. And then I'll call it a price watermark. And let's call it, I don't know, 1. And when I do that and click save, this action of adding the watermark to my image with its corresponding criteria will be now saved as an action that we can play on other images. Let's also, while we're here, let's just save this file. So this file that I'm saving is the eagle image that contains the watermark in it. And I'll save it as an ACDSee file because that makes sense. So it's already listed by default, and then I'll just click save. Now what I can do is I can navigate back to manage mode. So we have a couple things in this folder. We have the ACDSee watermark that I created, the PNG version of the watermark, which is going to be smaller in file size. And then we have a watermarked image of a eagle that we can see here with my corresponding watermark on the bottom right hand corner. If I go to actions menu here, let's go to one image here. We'll go to the first image. If I click on actions in manage mode, click on actions browser, if I navigate to the category that I've created, so I can click this drop down box right here and navigate to the watermark category, I can see that my watermark has been added to the bottom right hand corner of my image preview based on this watermark here. This image, this is maybe one where it's like I will want to play around with the watermarking settings, and maybe overlay doesn't work for all the images. But we'll watch. We'll see what happens. If I want to make another watermark and just apply a simple normal blend mode with lower opacity, we can do that too. But there's the image right there. So it's listed under our watermark, and it's present right here. So it's saved, and we can see it. What I can do from here is I can select a group of images. Let's just select the first 2 rows in this folder. And what I can do is I can navigate to the action section here. I can go to watermark, and I can play the watermark action on this group of images. The other thing I can consider too is I can actually consider going to options beforehand, and we can look at what the format would be when we reconstruct those images or with that watermark. So these action results showcase where this image is going to end up and how it's going to be saved. So it's going to rename the modified images and place in the source folder. Excuse me. Or we can overwrite the selected files, which we probably don't want to do. Or we can place them in a particular folder if we wanted to. So if I wanted to create my own folder, maybe I'd create a folder just in the pictures section here, and I'll just call it watermark. And I'll click on that particular folder here, and this is where we're going to save these images to. So I have a new folder in my pictures section here called watermark. And if I look down, it looks like I'm saving them as a JPEG. Maybe I want to save them as an ACDSee file because that will enable me to move that watermark if I need to. But I can also save it as a variety of other formats. And really all this is going to save it as is it's going to save it as an image that contains that watermark in it. And it's going to have the ability for me to edit that watermark if I need to. So I'll click on ACDSee. That's maybe nice for this, just to have some control over where it's placed. If I don't like it, click OK. And then from here, I'll just run that watermark. It's going to remember these settings. So I'll click on play. And it's going to apply that watermark. And it's going to place them in that folder that we created called the watermark folder in my pictures folder. So we'll have a look in that folder after this is done applying that watermark, and we'll see how the final product turned out. Maybe before we do that too, we can add a JPEG version in that same folder as well. So we have one that's non-destructive and one that has the full editability of the watermark. So it's playing. It looks like it's just about done. And this is something that you could do on a huge group of folders. It's just probably something you'd want to walk away from. But yeah, you could play this on all your images. I'll navigate back to actions and watermark, and I'm going to click on options again. And this time I'm just going to change it to a JPEG. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'll play this watermarking process, same folder, and there we go. So it's playing through. It's a bit faster this time because JPEGs are obviously much smaller files than fully editable files. And the process is complete. So now what we can do is we can navigate back to a different folder. So I'll navigate to that watermark folder that we created, which will be, oh, it's at the top. So here it is. Let's see how this particular watermark turned out on these images, and if we need to adjust it, we can. So we'll click on the view mode, and I'll just change it to film strip. So that one came out okay. That one came out not so great. That one's fine. Some of these are, as you can see, the first image is an ACDSee file, and the second image is a JPEG, which is what we saved. This came out fine. It looks like overlay is much better on flatter backgrounds than it is on complicated backgrounds. For example, this overlay is harder to see because of the granularity of the rock that it's sitting on, where something like a flat transparency wouldn't be as hard to see. These are nice. You can see the other thing too, that depending on the orientation of the image, this one's really hard to see, so I'll have to change that. But what it's going to do is it's going to set that watermark relative to the that space, that 110 pixels by 110 pixels, in correspondence with whatever the image orientation is. So this image orientation is it's higher than it is wide, and so it's done that as well. That looks really nice. Wow. As you can see, that placed just fine for the most part on these images. What I might consider doing is just saving a secondary watermark just in case. Some of these watermarks turned out worse than others. This one, for example, came out pretty dark. This is looking pretty good. Wow, that's a pretty image too. That one turned out fine. And as you can see, that's how that kind of works. We can play these watermarks that we've created on our images. Let's navigate back, and we'll just make another quick edit to that watermark, and we'll talk about it. So let's go back into our birds folder here, and we'll turn that view mode off. And let's just navigate to our bear here, for example. Or actually, we can navigate back to this file here. So I'm going to delete this particular watermark, and let's start recording again. So I've clicked on the record icon, and let's add our watermark, but instead of applying a fancy blend mode, let's just apply a normal blending with a lowered opacity. And this is going to be more visible on those images that I said had quite granular backgrounds. So we still have the same watermark image, we still have the same anchor port location, we have changed the blend mode, and we still have a watermark as a new layer added. Click on done. It's going to tell me that that's added in the recording, and I'll click stop, and it'll prompt me to save this. So we'll do watermark a price, no, or let's say no overlay. There we go. And I'll save it in the same folder. And we'll have a look at this on this exact same folder here. So I'll navigate away. And what I'll do is, let's do this. Let's take these minus that. And we'll maybe add one more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Actions, Watermark, and the Watermark No Overlay. And let's maybe put this in a subfolder just so we can see the difference. So I'll place it, images in the following folder, place them within Watermark, and I'll just add a test folder here to place these. Click OK. Click OK. And JPEG's fine for this. We will run this particular workflow on these particular images and just compare how it turns out on those images that had high granularity, like the brown bear, the first brown bear image, and the image that was really dark. We'll have a look at those two. So playing the effect, and then what we can do is we can navigate back to that same folder. So it was, if I remember correctly, watermark and test. And we'll just have a look at these two images in particular. And move you. Oop, what happened here? Oh, it won't allow me to move my comparison. Let's cancel that. That's okay. We'll just do it this way. There's our, yeah, way better. So it's really came down to just the particular blend mode that I selected for certain images. Whereas for all the other images, this turned out just as well. So, and then the other one that we have here is this guy right here. The other thing too is consider that you might want to just do a different watermark color too. You might want to use black instead and apply like a lowered opacity there, and that'll come through on some of the lighter images better than it'll say come out on the darker images. So certain watermarking just might require a little bit of tweaking depending on the lighting conditions, but as you can see here, all of these images contain that watermark in the correct location. Does anyone have any questions with the watermarking process? Just to reiterate, what we've talked about is like the location of watermark in the UI, what the different watermarks tools do. But then we took that and we said, okay, well, how do we actually create a watermark using ACDSee? And so we created a new file with a transparency and added text to that file and saved that as both an ACDSee file and a PNG file. And we then applied that PNG file, recording the process of adding that action, and then basically made a bulk action with that watermark. So now we can see that all of our images have my name on them in the font that I selected and that sort of thing. Keep in mind too, you already might have a logo or something like that, and you can use that logo provided it's a PNG file. I'm just wanting to showcase how you could do this right now using ACDSee and no other tools, right? You can just find yourself a nice font that you want to use online or something like that, and then quickly add your name using that font. No problem. Very quick and easy to do. That kind of covers it for the workshop today. It's a pretty easily understood, fast approach to adding watermarks to your images. And this is especially useful for obviously the people that are doing any professional photography. Something that I didn't really talk about in this image, but watermarking isn't always just in the bottom right-hand corner like a copyright symbol on an image. Watermarking might be quite large over top of the center of your image, in which case that's just a reorientation of where the watermark actually sits on your image. So that might increase the size of that watermark, much lowered transparency on that image, and then right dead center so that the copyright can be seen very simply and easily. And this is maybe the case when you're sending proofs to clients, right? You're not going to send the client the final photo. You're going to send them a photo with proof, right? And the reason why we do this is because you're not going to send them the final file prior to them paying you for your services. Yeah, so that sort of covers everything there is to know about watermarking in using actions. Trevor says this can be done as a batch edit also. I'm sure it can, but this seems like a record method will be easier to apply. I think it's more consistent in regards to the placement, but it's also something you can edit the process of. And the way that I've done it with ACDSee files is that if I need to move a particular watermark, so if I go into this particular file and I'm like, oh, I really like this image, but I want to move this watermark, I can do that. So now I can place it over here and I can save it. So I'll commit this file and save it. So it's one of these things where, okay, not only is the watermark added to the image, but the way that I've created the watermark enables me to go in and edit it, provided that I want to. Whereas maybe something like the bulk actions using batch edit isn't going to give you the ability to do that. Kim, what if I want a logo on the opposite side of my signature? If I use actions, depending on the orientation, will that be off center? No, I just think you need to run the action twice, Kim. So how would that look like? Let's take this same, let's just navigate back. So let's open this file. So I have my signature on one side and I want to add a logo on the other. Let's add a logo just to give you an idea. I would just create a separate action, Kim, for that logo because you're not going to be able to add both using the user interface for watermarking. So I would just create an action for the right-hand side of your image that contains the signature. And then for the left-hand side of your image, I would create one that contains your logo, a PNG version of your logo. Save those as two separate actions and then just apply one set and the other set. You know what I mean? Pretty simple and easy. It saves you a lot of time of going into each file individually and placing both of those things. So just treat them as two separate operations and then apply them. And it'll work just fine. Like that's going to be totally applicable. If I was to click done, you can see that, this is what that would look like. Perhaps a bit silly because they're both enormous, but you get my point. So I would just go through the process of creating an action for both. Create the action for your text, and then save it. Bulk action apply to your corresponding images. Save an action for your logo. Put it in your watermarks action folder so you have these two things handy and readily accessible. Honestly, it sounds like, Kim, if you use that same logo and same signature, you probably only have to create that action once and then it's done. And then you just apply that action whenever you're done taking photos and providing them to your clients. So, great question. What is the difference between applying blend mode in the watermark pane versus on the new layer in the layer pane? Okay, let me just think about this question here. What is the difference between applying a blend mode in the watermark pane versus on the new layer? There is a slight difference, Daniel. So here's my image layer, right? So if I apply my blend mode like this, so let's apply 100% opacity, okay? But let's not save the watermark as a new layer. If I don't save my watermark as a new layer and I click done, when I've completed that action, there's no way for me to adjust that watermark, right? It's finalized. So lowering the opacity or blend mode on this will affect the whole file. Versus if I save my watermark as a new layer, let's say I move it on the bottom right hand corner, and let's say I apply the same opacity, 100 to normal. That means that this layer can be blended, right? Look at this. There's no problem here. So in the case that you want to flatten your file, Daniel, for example, if I add another watermark, and I definitely intend on flattening this file, and I'm a total lunatic and I want two versions of the same watermark in my image, I can lower my opacity on this one and I can flatten it, so ensure that is not saved as a new layer, and that as such that will have the corresponding transparency that I desire. So if you're saving as a new layer, you're right, there's not a lot of difference because I can adjust the opacity using the layer tool. But in the case that I want to flatten my file, then that's a necessary function. I need to make sure that my transparency is set to the corresponding transparency I want. Does that answer your question, Daniel? Let me know. Wolfgang, you're so welcome. When can we see this watermark lecture post for rewatch? Ola, I typically upload these a couple days after the workshop is complete. So what I'll do is I'll save this workshop, and then I upload it to our YouTube page. So no difference if you add as a new layer. Only difference if you flatten the file. Correct. Yes. But yeah, you can find this on our YouTube page in a couple days. Ola, it'll be there. And also, I might make a quick tutorial video too that corresponds to these. Just because this is really good content, so I might make a quick tutorial series as well for users that prefer to just like a minute long or 2 minute long video rather than watching a workshop. But yeah, the workshop will be uploaded regardless. They always are. For those of you that are curious, if you go to our YouTube page, it's ACDSee Photo Studio, and you can either go to our brand new videos section right here. So my previous one here was organizing files in ACDSee, so you can find that here. And then you can go to our playlist section, and specifically you can find our workshop playlist, which is, where's our workshop playlist? There it is. So if you go to workshops, the most recent workshop will always be listed at the top. So, at the bottom it looks like. But anyway, the point is that we have all of our workshops in here. And actually, funnily enough, if you're curious, we have 118 workshops. You know, the average workshop length is about 45 minutes to an hour. So there's over 118 hours of content in this folder here. So you can watch all those. We've been uploading workshops, probably for about 5 years now. So we have all that content there. And then yeah, so then we have our tutorials and shorts as well that Rodrigo makes and uploads them here. So all that will be on our YouTube page. Give me a couple days to actually like render this file because they take a while to render because they're hour-long videos. But yeah, give me a second to do that, and I'll have it up there for you. Thank you, Ola. Yeah. If there's any other questions, that's it for the workshop for today, folks. I really appreciate you participating. I'll be scheduling some new workshops for the coming month. So if you have any suggestions, please reach out to me on our Connect page. You can find my name or account through the workshop page itself. So if you were to go to our Connect page and you navigate to workshops and you click on this one, for example, I will be right here. So you can view my profile and contact me that way. So, yeah. But that's it for today, folks. Nice birds. Yeah, thanks. Also, just to be clear, I didn't take any of these photos. These are lovely, commercially available images. So I'm not really watermarking these images because they're not mine. But thank you to the various photographers that took these. But yeah, just for the purpose of full transparency, these are not my photos. It's hard to do workshops with your own photos when you do them twice a month and you're creating new content. I don't go on enough vacations to merit taking all these new photos. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hardmet. Thank you, Bud. Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, CB. Thank you, Ola. Thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you, Trevor. Yeah, I'll probably turn off my microphone in a couple minutes here, and I'll leave the workshop open for a little bit so people can ask any final questions in the Q&A panel if they'd like. You're always a superstar presenter. I appreciate that, Kim. That's very kind. That's actually really sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you, CD. Thank you, Uwe. Thank you, Jokin. Appreciate that. Okay, everybody, have a great day. I'm going to mute my mic. I will talk to you next time. Like I said, reach out to me on Connect if you have any suggestions or anything you want to say. Okay, bye-bye.